Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to season number 14 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been up here in the broadcast booth, been having some technical difficulties out on the field and some extracurricular activities, I guess, that have been keeping us from being able to get the camera crews out here. But finally, after a couple of weeks off, we are able to get things rolling just in time for Super Speedway Week here for the ASRC Oval Series. Of course, here at Talladega, not the first time we've been here at this track. It's actually the second time here. Last race was won by Nico Morelli back, I believe, 3 seasons ago. Unfortunately, does not look like Nico is able to make it out to the field here this evening. So no matter what happens here tonight, this track will be finding a second winner here this evening. Of course, Talladega opened back in 1969. A track not without controversy. Its first ever race is wildly heralded as the worst NASCAR race ever. And it also had all sorts of controversy with its finish. And then, of course, here in 2003, of course, emulating the 2003 NASCAR season here with ASRC Oval Series this year. Back in 2003, this race had the largest track of all of NASCAR with a 27 car pileup on lap number 4. And then the finish ended up being controversial as well because it was the first time that the double yellow line rule ended up having to come into effect and affect the outcome of the race. Ended up with Dale Earnhardt Jr. taking home the win that year. Not quite as big of a field out here this evening as we saw back at Daytona, and not quite as big of a field as we saw here in the real Talladega race, of course, but still a decently sizable field out here. And taking a look down there, it looks like folks are starting to make their way down to the starting grid. So how about we take a look at how things will be lining up here for tonight's event. Starting out on the pole there in the number 93, that's going to be the league administrator himself, Mr. Jason Gardner, in that ASRC orange entry with a 51.46 to his name. Starting his outside, that's going to be the Trailer Park Dude 01 entry of Mr. Kevin West, followed by one half of the SM Racing Products crew. That's going to be the 74 of Jeremy Morrow back in position number 3. With his teammate, the other half of the SM Racing Products team, none other than Mr. Garrett Streets, back in 4th. Back in 5th, that's going to go back to one of our former champions. That's the 00 Everfrost entry of Garrett Hess, driver out of Mechanicsville, Maryland, followed by the 38 Beefy Motorsports of Brandon Feeney. Rocking a new paint scheme here this evening. Coming in running for Matco Tools instead of Liquimolly like he traditionally does. Back in 7th, though, that's going to be one of the rookie drivers here this evening, making his first start with the league in that 44. That's going to be Mark Royce in the Harley-Davidson entry, driver out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Back in 8th, though, that's going to be the 9 machine of Chris Fuff, followed by, back in 9th, the 188 of Joshua Rudolph, with Mark Kludge in the 45 rounding out the top 10 here this evening. Back in 11th, going to be the CZ Robotics 24 driver out of Noonan, Georgia. That is Corey Logan back in 11th, followed by Bryson Hickson-Bogg in the Turtle Juice 63 back in position number 12. 13th, going to go back to Charles Jettings in the number 96, followed by Nick Fuller in the 10, who I believe is rocking a new paint scheme here this evening as well. Then back in 15th, going to be the number 4 of Daniel Sparks in the Coors entry, followed by Mike Moultrie Jr. in the 3. Johnny Bell in the Dirt TV 27 back in 17th, followed by Derek Murphy, still rocking no sponsor here this evening, back in position number 18th, with the Moose Lander number 42 and Michael Sparks back in 19th, and Landon Wood in the 13. Rounding out the tail end of the field of this 20-car field this evening. Looks like Landon Wood's the only driver to not make the call to the starting grid, so it's going to be 19 drivers taking the green this time around. And as the iRacing.com safety car makes the dive down into the safety of pit lane, we are going to get this thing rolling for the Talladega 125. And of course, here, unlike Daytona, start-finish line not at the middle of the dogleg. It's actually a little bit further up the front, so going to be waiting a little bit here to take the green. Waiting. We go into the Geico restart zone. Green flag up in the air here for Talladega. Jason Gardner off to an early lead, but he doesn't have any help behind him. Kevin West just to the outside, having Jeremy Morrow hot on his bumper. No, that's Garrett Streets up there along with him. So far, so good. We managed to navigate into turn number one without any issues, which, all things considered, is saying a lot considering how some things have gone here in the past this season. Looks like, I believe that was Garrett Hess that has dived down to the bottom. Sure enough, he has bailed out in that number 400 machine. No, actually not the 400 this evening, just running the 00 here tonight. Garrett Hess has bailed out. He wants nothing to do with all of the drama and action up the front. He's going to immediately drop all the way back down to 13th. 9 positions down from where he qualified and still losing some ground. But as we come across the start-finish line, 1 lap in the book without any controversy. At a track like this, that is a pretty astonishing feat. Ken West is going to be the driver that takes home the first lap lead here this evening in the Trailer Park 201 machine here. Garrett Street's going to push just behind Garrett. Uh-oh. Bit of shuffling on the time and scoring board, though. It looked like there might have been an incident, but no, it's a-okay. It's just having about 2 rows of cars, 5 or 6 cars deep here. Time and scoring doesn't really know how to keep up with it. And I'll tell you what, speaking of timing and scoring not knowing how to keep up, in the real world NASCAR Cup Series this year, 2 separate photo finishes in the past 3 races. It has been a crazy season, both in the real world here and in the ASRC Oval Series here. Give a little recap for the things that you missed, though, is Bristol. Kevin West took home the win at 105 laps there back 2 weeks ago. And no cautions that entire race for Bristol race. That's very shocking. So Kevin West took home a win. Then Bryson Hixenbog took home the win last week at Texas again. An incident-free race here for the league. And as it stands right now, that shakes up the standings so that Kevin West is our championship points leader over Brandon Feeney, actually currently being scored back in second in the championship standings. Joshua Rudolph in third. Bryson Hixenbog in fourth. Michael Sparks finding himself in fifth in the championship standings right now. Of course, this is round 8 of this leg of the championship, so only 4 races left to go after this, and we have gotten it 2 by 2 up at the front of the field again. Everyone's starting to wiggle and wobble a little bit up there, but so far so good. Brandon Feeney finding his way up into the second position in that Matco Tools 38. Rocking the new paint scheme here this evening. Potentially it might bring him some good luck. Feeney never taken a championship home in the league before, but he was a runner-up in the points standings just a couple of seasons ago. Showing he still has what it takes to duke it out here, especially with all of these newer drivers on the field. Of course, Kevin West new this season. Chris Puff new this season. Mark Royce up here in the number 44 machine down there. This is his first ever race with the league, and he's running up in 6th position right now, side by side, battling for 5th. So drivers, not necessarily of all skill levels. Of course, there are all sorts of skill levels out there, but drivers of all sorts of experience here with ASRC as a whole out here as well. Of course, we got long-standing veterans out here. Jason Gardner, the creator of the ASRC Oval Series. Garrett Street's been out here pretty much since year 1 of competition. Garrett Hess here was in the first season. Same with Johnny Bell, Corey Logan. Lots of drivers out here that have been racing with the league all the way back since 2021, sometimes even earlier than that. Going head-to-head and toe-to-toe with drivers that have made their first ever starts in the league, sometimes even just last week. So far, all 2 by 2 here at the front still, as Kevin West has a little bit of breathing room to work with. Garrett Street's leading the outside line, but not quite able to contest for the front, as suddenly we are 3 wide right now. Someone's trying to go up the middle right there. That is the 9 machine of Chris Puff trying to make the middle of the track work, and Garrett Hess now finding himself alone up on the high line as everyone dives down to the middle. Puff going back and forth a little bit here, trying to make up his mind. Does he want to go with Garrett Hess up to the very top, or does he want to stay in the middle? Someone's going to go up to the very top with him, though. That's going to be Bryson Hixenbog trying to follow Hess through at the very top of the speedway, but I don't think he's close enough to really make it work here. But sure enough, we are now 3 cars deep here at Talladega. 7 laps in the books so far. Still a long way left to go here for this 47 lap event. Course Talladega 125. Running quarter length races from the real life NASCAR 2003 season. And Dale Earnhardt Jr., the man himself, was able to give us some very exciting news in the fact that they are currently working on scanning actual proper Gen 4 2003 NASCAR racing cars for the iRacing.com platform. Of course, the cars we're running now, these are ARCA cars, effectively, that just have higher horsepower, and that's just about it. I'm pretty sure the ARCA car is based on a nationwide series car, so not even an actual cup car. So it's going to be exciting to see if these new cars come out in the middle of this 2003 NASCAR season that we're doing. It'll be exciting to see things get a little bit more immersive, a little bit more true to the spirit of the season we're trying to emulate here with the ASRC Oval Series. Regardless, though, still 3 wide up here, and Bryson Hixenbog has sucked up to the tail end of Garrett Hess, so we actually have a proper 3rd lane going here. And that high line is actually doing it out side by side with the middle line pretty well now, right? Looks like the lower line still has most of the advantage here. Of course, the more cars you have in your line, generally speaking, the better off you're going to be. But that outside line really isn't doing all that poorly here. Your 3 leading cars, though, Kevin West, and I can't even tell who that is in the middle. That's Garrett Streets, and now Garrett Hess. And sure enough, we are just about to go 3 wide for the race lead here. Hess falls back just a little bit on that high line. But still, everyone around the field from 1st all the way back to 16th is within basically a second of the leader. We start to get a little bit more spread out back at the tail end of things. Michael Sparks, Nick Fuller, Charles Jetting, Mike Moultrie Jr. all getting a bit strung out. I think all of them are waiting for something to go catastrophically wrong here, as we've now completed about 4 laps, 3 abreast here for the race lead. But you can see at the tail end of things, people are starting to hang back here. They know that if something is going to go wrong, right here, right now is kind of the place for it to be, and they don't want to get involved in that because it will be the big one. If any one of these leading drivers has any sort of slight little fault or any sort of mistake, it could be catastrophe for most of the field right here. But I mean, I say that the last 2 races that we were unable to broadcast both went caution-free, so we could see a caution-free Talladega race as well. The only caution we had back at Daytona at the beginning of the season was because of netcode, and that was the one singular caution that we had. So it's entirely possible, if the computer gremlins decide to be nice here on the virtual Talladega Speedway this evening, things could be a-okay for all these Oval Series drivers. You can see, though, more drivers are starting to catch to the pack and actually get into this battle. And things are potentially going to be getting all the more explosive here in a couple seconds. Nick Fuller has fallen back to a 2nd behind the pack. Charles Jetting's a 2nd, or actually 2 seconds back from the pack as well. Then Mike Moultrie Jr., Landon Wood involved pretty much right up in that battle with them. But we're seeing more and more cars actually come into this lead pack as Johnny Bell in that dark red and black Dirt TV 27 thought about joining the high line for a second there, but falls back a little bit. It's good to leave yourselves with options in a situation like this. Of course, only 11 laps officially completed here. 47 the race distance. And Garrett Hess is actually going to become the leader of the middle line now. So now Bryson Hixenbog's finding himself hung out to dry. He has no help up on that high line, and probably what we're going to see that 63 do is actually drop back down and file on in with the middle line. Sure enough, now back down to being only 2 abreast for about 5 cars deep. Now actually make that 6 side by side for Jeremy Morrow and Mark Kludge as well. But so far, so good. Everyone is currently behaving themselves. It's just going to be a matter of when will somebody get too impatient here this evening. And there might be our issue as Brandon Feeney scrapes the outside wall. Get a top-down view of things. Feeney scrapes the outside wall. He loses a couple of positions, but no harm, no foul. No one involved in any sort of incidents there. But we are now 3 wide once again. Hixenbog having to check up in that Turtle Juice 63 to avoid getting into the back of the 38 machine. And that is going to cost them a little bit of track position there. Of course, they are still within drafting range here, so it's not like they can't make this ground back up. But any little hiccup, even just a slight little wall tap like that, is definitely something very scary for these drivers to be seeing. Aside from the main pack, though, taking a look down at the tail end of the field, this is actually the back half of what's going on right now. Charles Jettings currently leads the way in this 4-car battle for 17th on back to 20th. Charles Jettings, Mike Moultrie Jr., Nick Fuller, and Landon Wood all here in this little battle going on here. It's up at the front of the field. Garrett Streets, Kevin West, your front runners right now. As Jason Gardner, Garrett Hess, side by side for row number 2. "14 laps officially completed now. Still a long way left to go here, and everyone's generally being nice with each other. Which, all things considered, really goes to show the patience of some of these drivers, considering what we've seen go down, especially at Darlington. Darlington was a race full of controversy as we once again find ourselves 3 wide, and we might be seeing Garrett Hess electing to bail out here again. I don't think he's going to that high line to try and get some help. I think he just wants to drop out of the front battle. And that's something we even see the real world NASCAR drivers do. Sometimes if things start to get a little bit sketchy up at the front of the field, they'll just go ahead and pull out a line and let themselves sink back to the back. That way they have a little bit more room to react if something does go wrong. And again, options. Very important to not get yourself stuck in one spot here. But still, side by side for Garrett Streets and Kevin West. We're having a little bit of a interesting metric here in our timing and scoring. You can't see it on the broadcast graphics, but on the timing and scoring screen we have here in the booth, it's saying that Kevin West reached a top speed of 447 miles per hour at some point during this race, which somehow I am incredibly skeptical of, but we are actually seeing Johnny Bell and Corey Logan both clocking a 220 mile per hour top speed. That's a little bit more believable than 447, but you know, you never know. Computer gremlins love to make things a little bit confusing here, but it's safe to say that Kevin West, while he is leading the field right now, definitely not going 447 miles per hour. Actually, why don't we get a ride on board with one of the drivers in the middle of this whole battle? How about we go back to the 9 car here of Chris Puff and see what he is seeing going on around Talladega. Right on board with Chris Puff there in the number 9 SM Racing Products machine, finding himself 3 wide right now with Bryson Hixenbog and Brandon Feeney, as once again we see the third row start to materialize. Right now, again, it's just Hixenbog and Garrett Hess up there trying to make that third line work, but they are certainly putting a whole lot of effort into making it happen here. And we might actually see them getting some help up here. It looks like that number 15 machine of Garrett Streets sort of considering going up there, going to follow on down with the middle line though, try and help his two SM Racing teammates of Chris Puff and Jeremy Morrow as we start to see our first takers on down to pit lane. That is going to be none other Charles Jettings, Nick Fuller, Mike Moultrie Jr., and Landon Wood all coming down at the same time. Might as well, since they all were stuck in that little pack together, but they are all down onto pit lane here. As up in the front, our top 16 all electing to stick together for the time being, and I'd imagine we're going to start to see some of these folks try and come down onto pit lane as well. But of course, the reason you see those 4 drivers all pitting together is pretty much just because you need to use teamwork here at Talladega. Yes, motorsport is a race where is a sport, excuse me, where only one person can win. But you have to cooperate with the other cars in order to succeed. The draft is so incredibly important here that you have to stick together in order to make things work out here. And sure enough, there you can see the 4 drivers that just came out of pit lane as the leaders catch up to them. It's going to be a little bit scary here as everyone tries to find their spot, and we're keeping it 3 wide as we overtake these cars that just pitted here. Now it looks like things are getting a little bit less crazy. But Charles Jettings at number 96, the first of those 3 cars that came down pit lane, as we now see Landon Wood come down to pit lane. And it looks like Landon's going to be the only taker there, so that might be a bit of a tricky spot to find yourself in. Hixenbog and Kevin West, your 2 front runners right now, as Garrett Hess and Jason Gardner 2 by 2 just behind, but otherwise those lap cars made the second lane pretty much effectively just completely dematerialized. There is nothing left as we're basically all single file around the speedway here. And we're actually getting the message that Landon Wood had to take the tow truck down to pit lane, so he might have potentially spun down onto pit lane when he went down there. Let's take a quick moment to look back, see if we can't try and figure out what just happened. Let's see here if we can't look back at that. Looking down at Landon Wood here, as he apparently had to take the tow down to pit lane, supposedly. Or maybe just having connection issues, not quite sure what that was. Back up at the front of the field, though. Going west, Jason Garcer, Bryson Hixenbog, Garrett Hess, all still your front runners, as the second row starts to try and come back together, but not really. They really just don't have any energy to really work with down there. Going to be 22 to go as we cross the line, though, and none of our lead pack has elected to come down pit lane yet. Hixenbog's going to be the driver taking home the lap lead for that time around, so he will be picking up at least 1 bonus point here this evening, and with the amount of lead changes that we've had, I imagine we're going to see a whole bunch of drivers here taking home bonus points for leading at least 1 lap here this evening. Of course, there's a bonus point for leading a lap, bonus point for leading the most laps, and then a couple of bonus points for having a clean, incident-free race. Now here at Talladega, really it's going to come down to how much bump drafting happened, because iRacing can be a little finicky with handing out those incident points if you are bump drafting, and it doesn't really seem like we've seen all of that much going on here so far in this race, so I think most drivers should be okay, but if anyone did try it, it'll be really hit or miss on if they actually get those bonus points, because it's purely up to what iRacing decides is or is not an incident, and it can be a very fickle beast with that. Sure enough, though, the second line is back in action here as we see the Brandit 45 of Mark Kluge up there. And all of those drivers that are now lapped that actually went up and took fuel already are now all materializing in the high line as well. So they're helping add a little bit more energy to that second line, but it still seems like the bottom of the track currently has the advantage right now. Bryson Hixenbog, Garrett Hess going to take their way up to the front. And oh, that could have been dangerous. Hixenbog and Hess both come down onto the 01 of Greg West and take the race lead. And that now leaves the Brandit number 45 as the front runner for the outside line. Johnny Bell up there as well. And then it's just those three lap cars of Charles Jennings, Mike Walter Jr., Nick Fuller, all up there as well, but not really gaining any sort of ground by staying up there. Of course, really for the three of them, it's just a battle of who can get into the lucky dog spot should we end up having a caution flag fly. Already just about halfway through, or actually a little bit more than halfway through tonight's event. And so far, so good all around the field. No one has had any sorts of issues here this evening. That outside line still has a little bit of momentum to work with here, all things considered, despite the fact that Hess and Hixenbog ditched the outside line. They're still able to make some sort of moves happen here. I'm curious to see if, should Kluge and Bell actually clear our front runners, are we going to see the two of them drop down in front of Hixenbog as well, the same way they did to Greg West just a moment ago? But sure enough, I think the verdict is going to be no, because most of the field is now making the call to come down pit lane. And will we see any sort of drama or theatrics? No, everyone actually makes it down to pit lane without spinning, so kudos to all of them. Because we have seen a lot of spins on pit entry under green here in the ASRC Oval Series so far here in season number 14. But looking around the field, everyone makes it down without any sort of difficulty, and looks like we might have had one driver overdrive the stall. Garrett Hess. Garrett Hess overdriving his pit stall. I don't think he's actually correctly in the stall to actually get served. Okay, apparently he is. But he's going to lose all of his track position there. Will we see Johnny Bell and the other front runners come down now? Yes, we will. How will things look for these drivers? All good all around the field. Everyone has successfully completed their green flag pit stops without spinning on pit entry. So you know what? Good for them. Back here at the tail end of the field, though, this is how things are shaking up for the drivers that will cycle back around to the race lead once we get back up to the front of things. Bryson Hixenbog, Kevin West, kind of by themselves right now. As everyone works to get up to speed, things have gotten a little bit all over the place as our timing and scoring seems to be a little bit confused as to where everyone is. There we go. Now it's gotten everything sorted out. Big gaps between the drivers that came down pit lane, and that's probably just a result of the handful of people who overdrove their pit boxes, or maybe some drivers electing to take tires, other only electing to take fuel, because we're seeing a bit of variance in pit stop times here. Some drivers only having 7-second stops, other drivers having 12 or 13-second stops, and I think those drivers with the longer pit times might have actually tried to put tires on. As things might be getting a little bit hairy here. I think I just saw a little bit of bump drafting going on between the 01 and the 63 machine. Just the three of these drivers have a 5-second gap over the rest of the pack right now. 17 to go. And we might actually just be able to see these folks completely pull away here as caution flag is out. Caution flag is out, and it looks like maybe Charles Jennings was involved. I'm not entirely sure there. We're not getting any reports of crashes on the timing and scoring screen here, so let's see if we can't take a look back and figure out what just happened here. It's looking like whatever happened to Charles Jennings. So let's see if we can't get a replay here. Charles Jennings up on the high line. Actually, let's take a top-down view of things from our chopper camera here and see if we can't figure out what the deal is. As, oh, 4 wide. And sure enough, Charles Jennings is going to go around in that number 96 machine, pick up the 45 of Mark Kluge. But otherwise, all things considered, that was a very clean incident. Let's take another look back here, look down at Mark Kluge's perspective on this, right on board with him. That 4 wide moment was definitely sketchy, but really, that could have been a substantially worse incident for everyone involved. So that is going to be what brings out our first caution flag of the evening. As we do see a couple of takers down on pit lane. Jason Gardner going to come down, Mike Moultrie Jr., Nick Fuller, Charles Jennings, Brandon Feeney, Garrett Hess, Mark Kluge, all coming down to pit lane. Looks like the rest, oh, Derek Murphy. Alrighty, there we go. A little bit of weird technical difficulties going on there, but it looks like we've got everything sorted out under this caution flag, fortunately. Bryson Hixenbog still being scored as our race leader as we bring the field around. Should be one to go next time by, if I'm not mistaken. It's going to be Bryson Hixenbog and Kevin West, your front runners, as we come to the green flag here. Next time by, going to be 13 to go when we take the green flag. Provided, of course, this is the one to go. That is kind of the big question here. Everyone around the field has come down pit lane at some point during this race, though. Take a look down here. Everyone up at the front of the field right now has only done a single stop all around lap 29 or 30. But we have seen the back half of the field all elect to come down multiple times here using this caution to potentially top up on fuel, though we do potentially have some takers on tires, because I'm seeing 15 and 16-second pit stops going on, at least according to our pit stop history. So it's potential for drivers to have actually taken tires here under this yellow. I don't know how beneficial that's actually going to be here, but we'll have to keep an eye on it and see what all that actually manages to do for these drivers. Looks like Johnny Bell has actually retired from the race, though, in that number 27 machine, which is a little bit of a surprise to see. He really was having a pretty solid race here this evening. That's going to have Landon Wood being scored at the tail end of the field as the only driver not still on the lead lap. So should we have another caution flag fly, which all things considered really would not surprise me that much, considering the fact we are at Talladega having a short run to the finish. But if we get a caution, we will have everyone still in the race put back onto the lead lap. Sure enough, though, lights are off on the iRacing.com pace car, so we will be getting the 1 to green. Or excuse me, we'll be getting the green flag this time by going to be 13 to go before we crown a winner of tonight's event. So far, Hickson-Bog, Greg West have been some of the dominant forces here in the early goings of this race, but who knows? It's still anyone's game here. This is Talladega. Who knows what could happen? The iRacing.com pace car makes the jump down to the safety pit lane, though, so we are going to be going green flag racing here in just a moment. Just got to crawl our way up to the Geico restart zone. And green flag back up in the air here for the Talladega 125. The inside line, or the outside line, actually really struggling a little bit coming to the green. It looks like Chris Puff maybe missed a gear or just otherwise generally had a little bit of trouble getting that car up to speed. But of course, I say that the inside lines have just as much of a gap in certain portions of it, but it looks like most of the field's picking the outside line so far at the very least. Still just now taking the green, so it's going to take a moment for everyone to get themselves sorted, figure out where they want to be. But we're going to see a lot more jockeying for position here in these final couple of laps as people try to go for really whatever slight advantage they can. So we're not really gonna see any loyalty here on the inside and outside lines. Potentially, maybe some of the SM Racing Products folks will try and work together to make something happen, but otherwise, it's every man for himself out here as we see Jason Gardner get pushed up high and start to form a third lane as Mike Moultrie, Mark Luge, well, it started to look like they were going to go up there, and then they both immediately dropped down to the two bottom lanes. So now Jason Gardner hung out to dry all by himself. But still going to be Hickson-Bog and Greg West as our two row leaders up here at the front. As now Garrett Hess once again pulling up to the high line. Certainly not the first time we've seen him try and get a third lane going, but it does not look like he's got any takers really to help him behind, and he's going to drop back down to the inside line here. A little bit of a bobble out at 44 of Mark Royce. Again, rookie driver here, making his first start with the league, running up inside the top 4 right now. So far, really, everyone here this evening has put on a really solid running as we are nearly 3 or 4 wide back there in the middle of the pack. Hang on to it. Oh, Corey Logan goes around. Corey Logan goes around. So is the SM Racing Product 74 machine. Caution flag is out on the speedway. It is the big one here at Talladega. We all knew it was coming at some point, race fans. Doesn't matter how clean the race might have been. It is Talladega Super Speedway. There will always be a big one at some point or another. And sure enough, there it goes with just about 12 laps to go. Looks like Charles Jennings, Corey Logan, Jeremy Morrow, Daniel Sparks all definitely involved in that. Let's take a look back here, see if we can't get a better look at things. I believe looks like this is right about where it started between Garrett Hess, Chris Puff. That looks like the 42 of Michael Sparks in there as well. We're going to have to break out the slow motion camera for this, but let's go ahead and watch it for full speed first. No. Yeah, a lot more drivers involved in there than we first gave it credit for. That's the 4 machine of Daniel Sparks involved. Let's go back a little bit further here. What we're going to do is we're going to break out our handy dandy blimp camera here, get a top down, well, actually the chopper might be a little bit more helpful here. Get a top down view of things, play it back forward in slow motion, and I think our issue is actually up here with Garrett Hess. 4 wide, sure enough, the initial contact between, oh, so 2 separate incidents going on here at the same time. There's the spin of Corey Logan, and then 4 wide up ahead, Garrett Hess, Chris Puff, Michael and Daniel Sparks, Jeremy Morrow involved as well. The 10 of Nick Fuller involved in that. Feeney manages to make it through the gap. At least for the time being. There's cars coming down. But it looks like Feeney's going to manage to make it through. Oh, nope. almost made it, just barely. Oh, he bounces off the double zero. He might keep it pointed up in the right direction. Is that 13 going to stay out of the contact? Yes, he is. Alrighty, so that was quite a doozy. We'll get another playback of that at full speed here. But sure enough, a narrow dodge by that 13 machine of Landon Wood, able to get in a couple of positions there. Well, yeah, it looks like that incident with Corey Logan was entirely separate here. So let's take a look down at that one. That is the 24 Corey Logan, and it looks like the 188 making a little bit of contact there. That's the 188 of Joshua Rudolph getting into the right rear of the 24. All things considered, Corey manages to keep it off the wall. And frankly, as weird as it is to say, I think Corey actually got lucky getting spun there, because they completely avoided that actual main incident. And they didn't even make contact with the wall. So aside from the damage to the tires skidding across the ground there, Corey basically got out of that unscathed. So definitely quite the incident, quite the situation. But we're going to try this thing again here in a couple laps. Taking a look down at the timing and scoring as it stands right now. Still Kevin West and Bryson Hicksonvog as your front runners. Garrett Streets, Jason Gardner up there. That's going to be Joshua Rudolph, Mike Moultrie Jr., Derek Murphy, Chris Puff, Mark Kluge, and Nick Fuller. Your top 10 as it stands right now. Getting into pretty dangerous territory around the field, though. Going to be 8 or 7 to go when we take the green. Things are going to be very chaotic very quickly here this evening. And who knows? We might see a green flag run to the finish, or we might see a little bit of overtime here this evening. Just depends on if Talladega decides to give us another big one this evening or not. Of course, got to take this moment to give a big thank you to everyone tuning in here to tonight's stream. Definitely good to be back after those couple of weeks we had to take off. And of course, got to give a big thank you to the folks over at SM Racing Products who help put on these races every single Monday night and giving us this great racing action. So definitely be able to go over and take a look at SM Racing Products. They make some really solid sim racing gear out there. And of course, if you're interested in checking out the league and joining us, head on over to iRacing and look up the Attrition Sim Race Campus League. Link should be in the Discord of this broadcast as well. Or in the description, excuse me, should be the link to the Discord and to the league itself. And definitely look forward to seeing folks out there and potentially seeing even more of you out in the field in future races to come. That said, going to be going green flag racing this time by. Going to be 7-lap shootout to the finish here this evening. And the pace car is off, so let's try this thing one more time. As we start to creep our way into the Geico restart zone, green flag back up in the air here at Talladega. Immediately we see some drivers try and jump up and start to form a third lane, and immediately it's not going to work out. Caution flag back out on the speedway once again. Chris Puff around. Jeremy Mario makes it through, but there was someone else spun out there. That was Joshua Rudolph. They got spun around. Potentially Mark Kluge as well in that 45 machine. Looks like he might have gone off the speedway there. Went immediately under caution here for a third time here this evening. Let's take a look back here and try and get a look down at what all just happened. It looks like it was between Chris Puff and actually that 10 of Nick Fuller potentially. Coming to the green flag and tries to come back down onto the bottom line, and no, it just does not work. And a hard impact into the outside wall to boot. That restart just did not work out. And once again, I think maybe taking a top-down view of things would be the best view. As we come to the green flag here, everyone gets up to speed. Chris Puff pulls up to the high line, tries to make some moves happen, and just doesn't have the momentum he needs. Tries to drop back down, and surprise, there's a car there. Chris Puff goes around. Joshua Rudolph gets spun around as well. And it looks like Mark Kluge potentially also involved, but it looks like those are the two main victims of that incident, Joshua Rudolph and Mark Kluge. Rudolph gets spun up into the high line into the outside wall, and I'm actually not sure where Mark Kluge went then. Because we got word that Mark Kluge was off the speedway. Oh, a little bit of help from behind from the 44 of Mark Royce that spun Kluge around. And then that little dip through the grass right there is actually probably what triggered the notification that we had a car off the track. So not quite as drastic of an impact for that 45 as I was expecting to be, but that will make things definitely very interesting here in these final couple of laps. We do have a couple of takers down on pit lane. Nick Fuller is down. Joshua Rudolph is down. Jeremy Morrow, Chris Puff, Garrett Hess, Michael Sparks all down. But Garrett Hess and Michael Sparks both have been down there for 8 minutes now. Both of them went down under the caution from the big one that happened a little bit ago. But we now find ourselves in a situation where we might actually be getting a 3-lap shootout to the finish, quite possibly. The big question really is, when are we going to see the lights go out on the iRacing.com pace car? I believe it should be 3 to go when we take the green flag once again. So we do have a little bit more pacing left to go here for the evening. But how about we take a look and do a rundown of how the championship is shaping up right now. Of course, right now, Kevin West is our championship points leader. 1,160 points to his name. 2 wins so far here this season. Back in second going to be Brandon Feeney, the second driver with 1,000 points to his name at 1,005. Feeney has not had any wins so far this season, but has had a couple of top 5s, a couple of top 10s, doing pretty good so far here in the point standings. Back in third, Joshua Rudolph with 923 points to his name. Then it's going to be Bryson Hixenbog, who has only run 5 races this season out of the 7 we have completed so far. But he's taken home 3 wins, the most of any driver so far here this season. Took home the win back at Texas last week, of course. Took home the win at Darlington, took home the win at Las Vegas. So Hixenbog up inside the top 5, been having a really solid season so far. Then back in 5th, Michael Sparks with 899 points to his name. Michael, a driver we don't really see vying for the championship all that much. He's been a long-time driver here in the league, but so far, really been having a pretty solid season with, looks like, 3 top 10s so far in his 7 starts. The rest have been 15th, 15th, 18th, 19th. So all in all, not too bad for that driver. Then back in 6th, Carl Felver. Carl has only made, looks like, 5 starts so far this season. We have not seen him the last couple of races, but he has had some crazy finishes. First back at Daytona, second at Rockingham, second at Las Vegas, third at Atlanta, Darlington was the first race where we saw him not inside the podium. Back in 7th, going to be Daniel Wiles with 809 points to his name. Then Michael Moultrie back in 8th, 772 to his name. Charles Jettings is back in 9th with 757 points to his name. Then Jason Gardner rounds out the top 10 of our point standings right now. 745 points to his name. We've already talked about Kevin West, Bryson Hixenbog. The next driver on the time and scoring right now, that's going to be 15 of Garrett Streets. Is currently running actually 19th back in the championship standings right now, only running part-time here this evening, 4 starts so far. But Streets is a champion here in the ASRC Oval Series, just like Garrett Hess, so both these drivers still have a whole lot of speed, a whole lot of skill to work with, even if they aren't doing too particularly well in the championship standings right now, just by virtue of running part-time here in season number 14. But regardless, we're getting ready to go green flag racing here again. The lights are off on the iRacing.com pace car, and it's going to be making the dive down to the safety of pit lane this time around. Kevin West, Bryson Hixenbog going to be the 2 drivers leading the field to green. That's going to be Garrett Streets, Jason Gardner back for row number 2. Mike Moultrie Jr. and Derek Murphy for row number 3. And I'll tell you what, Mike Moultrie Jr. and Derek Murphy up 11 and 12 positions respectively right now. Both of them have been having a pretty good evening here this evening. iRacing pace car is off though. We're going to be going green flag racing this time by. And turn off green flag, back up in the air, potentially for the final time here at Talladega for the Talladega 125. Seeing a little bit of movement back in the back, but for the most part, everyone is a little bit more calm and collected this time around coming to the green. We make it down into turn number 1. That's better than last restart managed to go. And I'll tell you what, the outside line does not have a whole lot of cars to be working with here. Hixenbog up there, Jason Gardner up there, Mike Moultrie Jr. up there, and we actually see Mark Royce going up to the high line there in the number 44. He might actually be trying to make that high line work. I think he's serious about this. The 4 cores machine, that's Daniel Sparks, goes up to the high line to try and join him as they both go around Derek Murphy. Or at least start to try and make the move around Derek Murphy. Not quite able to, but we're going to come back around to the start-finish line. Going to be 2 to go here at Talladega. 2 by 2 for the race lead still. And now we find Garrett Streets being the race leader side by side with Kevin West. Moultrie Jr. and Hixenbog just behind. As that third lane starts to form again, but again, I don't know if they necessarily have quite enough momentum to make it work here, but they've got to try. That's about all they really can do. Going to be getting the white flag this time around, and we have a car around Michael Sparks. Has just taken the toe down to pit lane, so I'm not quite sure what happened to him, but it looks like we are keeping it green around the field. And as we come to the line, white flag up in the air, one more lap around Talladega, and of course this is iRacing, which means the caution flag will not fly if there's an incident here, so it is a drag race to the finish no matter what happens. Jason Gardner jumps up to the high line, tries to make the outside line work, and will he have any helpers? Not really. No, he will not. No, one person goes with him. That's Derek Murphy going to be going with Jason Gardner, try and make the outside line work, but I don't think they have the momentum to make it happen. It's either going to be Kevin West or Garrett Streets making something happen here, and it's looking like Kevin West so far, but will he be able to hang on to it? Streets pulls up alongside him. It's going to be close here. And as the checkered flag flies, it's going to be Garrett Streets taking home the win. Garrett Streets takes home the win at Talladega, and chaos erupts across the start-finish line. Garrett Streets by... I mean, our timing and scoring is saying 0.01, but I think that might be rounded up. I think it might have been closer than that. What a finish here at Talladega. we're going to need to take a look back at that race, fan. And once again, I think we find ourselves needing the chopper cam to come out here as we cross the line. Side by side heading into the Geico restart zone, and it looks like the 01 of Kevin West has the advantage, but just barely a little shove from Hixenbog as he tries to go up to the high line. Then there's contact there. Everyone starts to spin. And honestly, I think that's a little bit of a spin there is what might have been what doomed Kevin West. But it's going to be Garrett Streets. Garrett Streets taking home the win here in that number 15 SM Racing Products machine. Former league champion, showing that he still has what it takes to bring home race wins here in the ASRC Oval Series. What a crazy race it has been here this evening. Garrett Streets takes home the race win, and honestly, that might have been Garrett Streets' only lap led. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think that might have been the 15 machine's only lap led. That said, race fans, don't go anywhere. We will be back here in just a moment with some words with your top 3 finishers. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to Talladega. Welcome back to the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. And speaking of SM Racing Products, Mr. Garrett Streets running only part-time here this season, former champion here in the league, and you've shown tonight you're still able to take home wins with this bunch. How are you feeling here this evening? No, I can't hear you if you're saying anything, by the way. Oh. It wouldn't be an ASRC broadcast without technical difficulties. Hold on here.
Hey, I've got
Oh,
it figured
there we
out
go.
now. Sorry about that. So excited we broke the phone.
Hell yeah, I mean, that was a heck of a finish here this evening.
Yeah, it was a wild race. We were running pretty fast there. Definitely a stacked field, man. It's a tough group. It's been really tough this season. A lot of great racing, a lot of super fast guys in here, and I'm just happy to have a shot. I know it's Talladega, so people kind of think that it's a gimmicky win, but I enjoy running the plate stuff. I feel like I'm pretty good at it. We had a bad time at Daytona to start the season, so I didn't think that was indicative of the kind of speed that we have on these types of tracks. But yeah, we ran up front, had a decent qualifying race. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hook up with Jeremy and Chris, my teammates, and work together. But worked real well with Kevin. Pushed him a lot of times on the restarts and everything, and hate to see that he got turned there at the very end. But we had a great battle coming to the line, and it was a ton of fun there on those last few laps that final restart.
Absolutely. And of course, you said, and I quote, it's going to be lit. Did you think you were going to be taking home the race win here tonight when you started things off in practice?
Uh, I mean, I don't know. I felt like I said, I felt like I have a shot at it, but everyone has a shot at it, but things have to go the right way. You have to stay out of incidents and you have to avoid the carnage and all that stuff that goes on. But yeah, I was just happy to be back, happy to be at the track, and happy to get that win.
Yeah, certainly great to have you out here. I know, like me, we couldn't make the last couple of weeks, but definitely great to have you out here again. Next week, though, heading on over to Martinsville, do you think you'll be able to have what it takes to make something happen at a short track?
Martinsville is going to be tough. I haven't ran a whole lot of Gen 4 shorts track stuff. I do enjoy Martinsville a lot. I do feel like it's one of my better tracks, but I'm not sure that I've ever been there in a Gen 4, so it'll be a whole new experience. Yeah, hopefully we can just keep it clean, and we'll see how it all cycles out and where we can finish.
Seems like a solid plan to me. There's always a first time for everything. But of course, before I let you go and celebrate taking home a race win here in the Gen 4 car, the microphone's all yours, Mr. Streets. Who you want to thank for making things happen here this evening?
Yeah, first I want to thank all the ASRC guys, everyone who comes out here to race, and then admins, Jason, Jason Gardner, yourself, uh, for all that you guys do on getting everything planned and ready and broadcasting. I want to thank girlfriend Morgan for watching and support me in the racing. And I want to thank all of our customers out there and supporters for SM Racing Products. I want to thank Jeremy. He's the other half of SM Racing Products. He's the brains behind the whole operation. So, yeah, if you guys need any hardware or anything like that, button boxes, dashboards, flag displays, anything, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here this evening. Congratulations on the win, and I look forward to seeing you next week in Martinsville.
Yeah, thanks, Aiden. Appreciate it very much. Have a good one.
And finishing back in position number two, Mr. Kevin West, you put on a heck of a run here this evening, but just a little bit short at the final lap of things. How are you feeling here this evening?
Feeling pretty good. The strategy was just to stay out front the whole race and stay out of trouble, and that's pretty much what we did. We just came up just a tad short at the end, but overall, a pretty awesome race. Had a lot of fun, and we had a good showing. We just came up a little bit short.
I guess one of the big questions there is there in your mind anything that you could have done different here this evening to be taking home that checkered flag?
I really, I almost went up and tried to block Garrett there. He had a huge run though, so I was kind of thinking we probably would have widened him up there in the tri oval. So I'd have stuck to the bottom and just hope for the best, pretty much.
Fair enough. I mean, even if you didn't take home the win here tonight, you are the championship points leader coming into tonight's event, and I believe with that runner-up spot, since it looks like Garrett is back in 19th in the championship standing, so you should still be the championship leader heading into Martinsville next week.
Well, that's good, man. I don't plan on giving up that championship lead, so I think Martinsville will be a decent track for me. It's probably not my best. I don't think I've ever ran there in the Gen 4, but we'll show up next week and give it hell and see what happens.
Fair enough. That seems like a solid plan to me, and if nothing else, it seems like you're not the only driver who's never been to Martinsville in this car before, so it might be a little bit of a learning opportunity for everyone out there.
It sure will be, but we'll figure it out by the end of it, hopefully.
Fair enough. Well, sounds like a plan to me. And of course, before I let you go to celebrate this podium and start getting yourself ready for Martinsville next week, the microphone is all yours, Mr. West. Who you want to thank for making things happen?
I want to thank my wife for watching the stream, supporting the stream. We got about 2,000 mobile homies in the chat here on TikTok watching the action. They're loving what they're seeing as well. So appreciate everyone following along.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out. Congratulations on the finish here this evening, and I look forward to seeing you next week in Martinsville.
We'll see you then.
And finishing back in position at number 3, Mr. Bryson Hicksonbog. You're one of the only drivers that tried to make the truly high line work, and evidently you made something happen here tonight. So how are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. These cars at super speedways are real tough to actually make some moves and get up to the front if you're not already up there. So it was nice to see that Garrett Hess was trying early, and I decided to go with him, and we made something work there on the high line. It took a while. You got to make a lot of small improvements before you can actually get up there and clear yourself. But we made it happen and got both of us up to the front, and I ended up staying up there for the end.
Do y'all reckon if this race stayed green, would that work more in the favor of trying to use that strategy, or did these cautions actually help y'all out at all?
Well, if it had stayed green there, I think it would have been a little bit more boring for the viewers at home because there would have been three of us at the front pack. I think we were about 8 seconds in front of the field. We got a little bit split up on the green flag pit stop, but yeah, when you get after those pit stops and everybody gets cycled through, you kind of don't need that third line because everybody gets spread out. But it worked really well on those restarts and getting up there, trying to get that third line moving and trying to make up some positions.
Sure enough, and of course, coming into tonight's event, looks like you started back outside of the top 10. So were you feeling like this was a race where you would be walking away with the podium?
I felt like I had a shot. I missed qualifying, so I started back there with all the other guys that uh, didn't do it, and had to make up some ground early. I wanted to see, kind of scout who I wanted to work with, and saw Garrett Hess, and he was one of the only guys trying to make it work, so I went with him, and we made some moves. And I thought I might have a shot, but it's always tough to survive all the wrecks here at Daytona and Talladega.
Fair enough. Still a very solid running for you either way. And looking at the standings coming into tonight's event, you have the most wins of any drivers. So now you're tied with Kevin West. Heading into Martinsville next week, do you think that's a track where you could potentially break that tie?
Very possibly. There's definitely a lot of things you got to watch out for in Martinsville. You got to avoid the wrecks, and then these cars you got to not get hit from behind because it's going to be carnage out there if you get bumped in the corner. But it'll be interesting to see. You got to survive to the end. Hopefully, we'll put ourselves in a good position there and maybe make something happen in the final 10 laps.
Fair enough. That sounds like a pretty solid plan to me, and frankly, I look forward to seeing these cars putting on a bit of short track action. But of course, for now, that's just about all we've got here at Talladega. So before I let you head out for the evening, who do you want to thank for making everything happen here tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out all the league drivers that we made it. What was it, 33 or 34 laps there on that first green run? We made it through pit cycles without anybody wrecking, although we didn't make it much farther than that. But it's usually impressive to see a whole league go through a green flag pit cycle without anybody getting too screwed up.
Yeah, everyone put on definitely heck of a show here tonight, and of course, appreciate everyone coming out here this evening, and I appreciate seeing you up here in the booth, and I look forward to seeing you next week in Martinsville.
Thank you. Hope to talk to you again.
So that was your top three finishers here this evening. Garrett Streets, Kevin West, and Bryson Hicksonbog rounding out your podium here tonight. Of course, those were not the only drivers here in the field here this evening. So how about we take a look down at our unofficial race results as they stand right now. Finishing back and forth, going to be the 3 machine of Mike Moultrie Jr. with Corey Logan in the CZ Robotics, bringing home a top 5 finish. Back in 6, that's going to be that rookie number 44 making their first start here in the league. That's going to be Mark Royce back in 6th. Followed by the 96 of Charles Jennings, who we saw laps down in the early goings of this race, bringing it home back in 7th. Back in 8th, that's going to be Brandon Feeney in that 38 BP Motorsports entry, followed by Daniel Sparks in the 4 machine, with Nick Fuller in the 10, fittingly rounding out the 10th position. Back in 11th, that's going to be the 13 of Landon Wood, followed by Jason Gardner back in 12th. Derek Murphy bringing the 78 home back in 13th, followed by Joshua Rudolph in 14th, with Chris Puff in the 9, rounding out the top 15. 16th, we'll be going back to the 74 of Jeremy Morrow, followed by Mark Kluge back in 17th, with Michael Sparks in the Mooselander 42 back in 18th. Then it's going to be Garrett Hess in the 00 back in 19th. After all of that dominant performance we saw him do together with Hicksonbog on the high line, fortunately bringing it home back in 19th after being involved in the big one here this evening. And then back at the tail end of the field, that's going to be the 27 of Mr. Johnny Bell. That said, that's just about all we got here from Talladega Superspeedway. It has been a heck of a run here for round 8 of the championship. And now we get into the closing chapters of things in these final couple of weeks. Of course, next week, heading over to Martinsville, then to the Auto Club Speedway for 125 miles, then Richmond, and finally Charlotte Motor Speedway for what I believe will be the longest race, not just of this season, but of the entire championship, of course, because that will be the quarter distance race of the Coke 600. So our championship for this particular stretch of the season will be 150 miles at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and that is bound to be one heck of a race. But next week, heading on over to Martinsville for a little bit of short track action in these Gen 4 cars. So that said, thank you all for tuning in to tonight's event, and we look forward to seeing y'all next week, same day, same time, Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for